On my wedding night, when I was 20 years old, I sat on the cold floor of a washroom in a house that had been mine for 6 hours, my wedding dress still half unbuttoned, and I was certain, all the way down, that something in me was broken. Not sad, not shy. Broken, the way a hinge is broken, so that a door someone built to open will not open. And I sat there and understood for the first time that in 20 years, not one living person had ever told me a single true thing about what I was walking into that night. They had taught me everything a wife's 2 hands must do. They had taught me nothing at all about the rest of her. I want to tell you what Amish girls are taught about men before their wedding night. And harder than that, what we are not taught. Because I wish, with everything in me, that just once someone had warned me. I did not have a word for it that night. I have one now. Before I go on, let me say the one thing I say to every woman who finds this window for the first time. Stay. Sit down a while. There is a little bell near this window, and if you ring it, I will know to call you back the next evening I have something to tell, because the things I say here are the things we are never permitted to say aloud in the district. And down in the comments, when you have a quiet minute, tell me one thing, and I read everyone. On the night your own life changed, whatever night that was, what did no one warn you about? I have read 1,000 of your answers, and not one woman has ever written the word, nothing. We were all of us sent into it in the dark. Let us at least not sit in it alone. Now, you have to understand what a plain girl is taught, and the order it comes to her in, because the order is the whole quiet cruelty of it. From the time I could hold a wooden spoon, I was taught work. How to set bread so it rises by dawn, how to put up beans and beets and cherries so a cellar carries a family through a winter, how to run a wash line and a garden row so that by 14 I could keep a whole household from dark to dark. Then, folded in with the work, submission, a wife yields to her husband, gently, gladly, the way the church yields to the Lord. Then modesty. Cover yourself. Do not draw the eye. A woman's body is a thing to be hidden and never once spoken of, not among women, not even, if I am honest, to herself. And then, over all of it, like a lid, silence. The good woman is the quiet one. The wise woman is the one who does not ask. And that was the whole of my education. Do you hear what is missing from it? Everything that comes after the vow. They armed me for the kitchen and the garden and the wash line, every hour of daylight for 20 years, and about the one room in the house where I would be the most alone and the most frightened and the most in need of one true word from one older woman, they said nothing. Not a warning, not even a soft small lie to take the edge off it. Only silence, handed to me wrapped up as if it were a gift. And I have to be careful here, because it would be easy to hate someone for that, and the truth is, there is no one to hate. My mother did not keep it from me out of cruelty. She kept it from me because her own mother had kept it from her, and hers before that, a long line of good and faithful women, each one handing down the very same locked box, each believing the not telling was itself a kind of modesty. It was not any one woman's sin. It was the water we were all of us swimming in, and a fish cannot hate the water. That is the hardest kind of wrong there is to name, the kind nobody chose and everybody keeps. Let me tell you how I came to be sitting on that washroom floor. I married Amish the autumn I turned 20. Ours was a plain courtship, the only kind there is. He drove me home from the Sunday singings in the dark, and we had one summer of letters, and in all that time we were never once alone in a room together, longer than it takes a buggy to cover a mile of gravel. I knew his handwriting better than the sound of his voice, and I knew he was steady and gentle with a nervous animal. And past that, I will tell you plainly, I knew almost nothing about the man I had promised my one life to. That is not a failing of ours. That is how it is built. The night before the wedding, my mother came up to my room, and I lay in the dark with my heart going like a rabbit under a hawk, thinking, now, here it comes. Now she will tell me the thing a mother must surely tell her daughter on this one night out of a whole life. And she sat on the edge of my bed and smoothed the quilt flat with one hand, over and over, and was quiet a long time. And then she said, "Be good to him, and do as he asks, and the Lord will make the rest come right." And she kissed my forehead and went back down the stairs. And I lay there and thought, that is it? That was everything my mother had to give me, because it was everything she had ever been given. Be good, obey, and trust God to handle the one thing your own mother cannot make her mouth say. I did not understand that night that she had been every bit as frightened as I was. I understand it now. And then the wedding was upon us and past us, the way a plain wedding is, a Thursday, 300 people, celery in jars the length of every table, a bride and groom who had never had a single hour truly alone together. And by dark they were all gone. Every last buggy rocked away down the lane, and the little house went so quiet I could hear the clock on the shelf. And then it was only us. This grave, gentle, near stranger of a man I had given my whole life to that morning, and me, in a dress I had sewn for a life I could not yet picture, and the whole of my 20 years of education, about to prove itself worth exactly nothing. I will not tell you the particulars of that night, and would not even if this were not a window where strangers can hear, because the particulars were never the point. The point is only this. I was frightened, badly, and I did not understand the first thing about why, or about what was ordinary and what was not, and I had nothing to reach for. No mother's word stored up, no aunts, no married friends, not one sentence saved from anyone to hold in the dark. And so I did the thing a girl does when she has been raised to believe that every hard feeling is a failure of her own goodness. I decided the fear was mine. I decided the not knowing was some flaw the Lord had set in me and left out of every other bride in the district. And I got up in the middle of that night and sat on the cold floor of that washroom and wept as quietly as I knew how, so the man on the other side of the wall would not hear it and learn he had married something broken. And I have to stop here and say a thing very plainly, because if I do not, you will carry away the wrong story. And it is not the story. Amos was not a cruel man. I need you to hold on to that with both hands. He was not rough, and not unkind, and not anything in the world but as lost as I was. A boy of 22 handed down the very same locked box I had been handed, taught his whole life that a man leads and provides and does not speak of soft or frightened things, lying awake on his side of that dark, just as alone as I was on mine. There was no villain in that house that night. It took me years to see it. The cruelty was never in the room. It was in everything that had come before the room, the long, patient, loving silence that had walked two frightened children up to the door of a marriage, told them nothing, and called the telling nothing a virtue. There is far more of this than I can carry to one window in one evening. The weeks that came after. The slow way two strangers learn to be kind to one another when no soul has ever shown either of them how. I wrote all of it down, everything I am never able to say aloud in our district, in a little book. It is called A Quiet and Faithful Home, and it is sitting there in the first pinned comment below, if you should want it. No hurry, it will keep. But do not go yet. Please. Because I have not told you about my friend Rebecca, whose story began exactly where mine began and did not turn the way mine turned. And I have not told you about the old widow who found me 3 weeks after my wedding and said 11 words to me that I have lived inside every day since. Stay for those two. They are the whole reason I can tell you any of this with no bitterness left in me at all. Rebecca and I were girls together. We learned our letters at the same worn bench, were baptized the same wet spring, and married our men 1 year apart, into the very same silence. But no old woman ever came and found Rebecca. She had the fear I had, the same certainty that the trouble was hers alone and hers to hide, and no one at all to lift it off her, and so she did the only thing a person can do with a shame she believes is her own private defect. She hid it. She folded it up small and carried it in secret, and it did not grow lighter with the years. It grew heavier. And I watched, across a long time, a bright and laughing girl go quiet. She kept a beautiful house and raised good children. But some warm living thing in her had gone behind a wall and turned the lock, and she was lonely inside her own marriage for a very long time. Lonely in that particular way of a woman who was never told that what she felt on her wedding night was not a sin and not a flaw, but the most ordinary thing in the world, the very thing every frightened bride in the history of our people has felt and swallowed, and never once been given leave to say out loud. Rebecca is well now, I am glad to tell you, but she lost years to a silence that would have cost nothing to break, and that no one broke. Now here is the other story, the one that saved me. There was an old widow in our district, Anna Byler, who had buried a husband and 2 grown sons, and had the kind of stillness that only comes to a woman who has already survived the worst thing she was afraid of. 3 weeks after my wedding, at a work frolic, when the young wives were in the kitchen, and I was carrying myself the way you carry a cup full to the very brim, old Anna came and stood beside me at the sink, close, where no one could hear. She dried a dish a while, and then she looked at me, once, sideways, and she saw the whole of it. I do not know how. The old ones can read a young wife the way you and I read weather, and she said to me, very low, 11 words. She said, "You are not broken. No one told you. That is all. You are not broken. No one told you. That is all." I nearly went down onto that kitchen floor. 3 weeks I had carried the certainty that I was the one defective bride in the district, and this old woman set it down for me with 11 words at a sink, the way you lift a too heavy basket out of a child's arms. And then she told me the rest, quietly, the things my own mother could not. That the fear was ordinary. That Amos and I were only 2 people who had been given no map, and would learn each other slowly and kindly if we were patient. That a marriage is not a test you pass or fail on the first night of it, but a long and gentle teaching that takes the better part of a life. That she herself had nearly lost her own marriage to that same silence, and no one had come to her sink, and so she had made a promise to be the woman she never had. She was keeping that promise, at that sink, with me. And I will tell you one thing more, because it is the piece that finally gave me the word I have now. Many years after Anna, out in the English world, I said a little of this out loud to an educated woman who knew nothing of our ways, and she did not gasp, and she did not pity me. She only nodded, and put one plain, ordinary word on my whole young life, a word I had never once thought to lay against it. She called it being kept unprepared, as though it were a thing that had been done to me, and not a thing I had failed at. I had been sent out of the house without a lamp, and that is not the same at all as being born blind. I cannot tell you what that one word did inside of me. It is one of the reasons I sit at this window at all. So this is what I do now, and it is a small thing. When a young bride comes to me in the weeks before her wedding, frightened, circling the question she has never been given the words to ask, I do for her exactly what old Anna did for me. I take her hand, and I tell her the true things, quietly, one at a time, in a kitchen where no deacon can hear. I cannot pull down the wall that we are all of us raised behind, but I have learned there are gates set into that wall that a woman can quietly leave unlatched, one girl at a time, and no one has ever yet noticed a gate that was simply never shut. And to you, whoever you are, wherever this finds you, I want to say 3 things before I go. If you are a young bride tonight with a knot pulled tight in your stomach and no one to loosen it, I see you, and the fear is not a sin, and it is not a flaw, and you are not the only one. You are only the newest. If you are a woman of my years or older who has carried some private, wordless ache since the very first night of a long marriage and was never once given leave to set it down, I see you too, and hear me. You were not broken. No one told you, that is all. And it was never too late to be told, and you have just now been told. And if you are a mother with a daughter coming up toward that age, and the locked box is sitting in your own 2 hands this very night, I see you most of all. You do not have to hand it down. You are allowed to be the woman who breaks the silence instead of the one who keeps it. It costs nothing but a little courage at a kitchen table, and it can give a girl back years of her one life. I wish someone had warned me. That is the whole of it, and I have made my peace with it, and then made it into a purpose. No one warned me, and so I have made myself into the warning I never got, a quiet voice at a window, telling the young the true things while there is still time for the truth to be a comfort, and not only a grief they look back on. Tell me in the comments, so the other women know they are not the only one who ever sat on a cold floor in the dark. What is the one true thing you wish an older woman had told you before your own life changed? And if someone did tell you, who was she, and have you ever gone back and thanked her? I read everyone. Sit at this window with me again. There is always more of the story than one evening can hold.